Hello everyone. Welcome to the final part of Shogi-X. This is the final trial. This is the big final game of the whole series. I'm doing it in person because it's actually a really big event for me. This game took 2 hours to set up, and I'm not exaggerating. It actually probably took a little bit longer because I did it in 2 different sessions, but it is an incredibly large game. Each side of the board has 434 pieces, which adds up to a grand total of 868 pieces for the entire board. This board is a 36 by 36 for 1,296 total squares. That is a lot. For example, here's an entire chess set between the 2 sides of the board. It's quite literally the biggest chess variant game that ever has existed, as far as I can tell based off of the limited research I've done. I've done decent amounts of research, but I mean, obviously somebody could have made something out there that has not been researched, as has not been put on the internet. But as far as I can tell, this is the literal biggest chess variant game that's ever existed. The closest is obviously the game that it was based off of, which is Taikyoku Shogi.
Although Taikyoku Shogi is the exact same size as this game, things about Taikyoku Shogi that are very different is the fact that unlike the previous games, Taikyoku Shogi changes a lot of the movements of some of these pieces, such as the Diva and Dark Spirit. They're very different depending on which version of the game you're playing. In Taikyoku Shogi, they move as notated here, but in different games they'll have different movement varieties. And so one of the things I've done when I made this game is I kind of took whichever I thought was the best from each game and kind of mashed them all together so that this final game would have like completely similar movements from all the previous games. And I tried to replace pieces from Taikyoku Shogi with pieces from previous games to either add dynamicity or make the game more interesting. But the fire demon can't burn pieces, and so a lot of the special abilities and cool aspects of the game were just removed in Taikyoku Shogi, and that's something that I've returned to the game. Similarly, also I've given things like the Fire General not only similar movements as they were in the other games, but the ability to burn, because I felt it was more important to have an interesting dynamic game rather than just to have a game where all the pieces were easy to understand. And that's where one of the biggest changes I've made comes in. This is all of the pieces, and they all have different promotions. And as you can see, I've been scrolling very quickly for a while now, and we're not getting near the bottom. There's a lot of pieces in this game, and they all have different movements, and you are supposed to simply remember every single one of these movement varieties. That's not the case in my game. I've given you these symbols to help you understand, and literally every piece shows exactly what it does, except for the aspects. The aspects are the only part that you actually need to remember in my game.
That's not the reason why it's the biggest one ever. The reason why Taikyoku Shogi is so much less complicated and so much easier to play is because this game takes dynamicity from all the previous shogis that we've covered in this series. If you haven't watched the rest of the series, you do not have to understand this. Also, this game, unlike many versions of chess and even shogi varieties, can almost feel like a card game. And what I mean by this is that there are many different paths or strategies you can go about when you're playing it. Similar to how some people prefer to advance with their knights rather than their bishops in chess, whereas other people try to focus on using their queen more often. These are different play styles, but in the end, chess only can go so far with it because of the limit of the board size and the amount of pieces. This game does not have those limitations. It has about 20 major pieces that can all be played in a different manner and make a game plan around. And so it's a totally different ballpark when it comes to the gameplay loop of this game rather than a game like chess or even something like Trial by Fire, which is probably my favorite trial, but this one is so much more advanced in the strategies that you can use around it. Going over some of these major pieces is important to keep in mind that each one will be used throughout your game for everyone playing. But focusing on one, putting your focus on one of these strategies, or maybe just two of them, can really lead to not only you understanding how the gameplay works better, but also being able to develop a strategy that you can use going into further games. The overarching chunk of multi-movers you have in this center front of your board is very important. Most importantly is your Tarantula Hawkmoth. This is one of the strongest starting pieces you have on the board. It is really good at defending because of the large space it controls. It can move to here on the first turn of the game if you'd like it to. I wouldn't recommend that move because it'll probably get captured by something very quickly, but the amount of space it controls is massive. And so being able to use that as not only a defender, but also being able to push with it, perhaps with your banner or something, can lead to some massive upsets in army control because it can capture up to 5 pieces in one turn.
You've also notably in the starting lineup get access to not only all 4 stars on both sides, north, west, east, and south on both sides, but also their promotions, which is the Capricorn, Libra, Taurus, and Sagittarius, also on both sides. Obviously, these pieces do not actually promote any further, but all of them synergize very well with the Star Warrior piece, which whenever you move one of your stars, you can move this piece because it's got Starseek in the middle here. And if you promote the Star Warrior to the Sato, same movement pattern, but it's the greater Starseek. And now whenever you move a Libra, Taurus, Sagittarius, or Capricorn, it will trigger this as well, but it triggers twice because you're hook moving those pieces, which means they're technically moving twice. So the Sato can be bouncing all over the board if you get these pieces moving, but if you don't move these pieces, it's really not going to do a whole lot. And you see how this dynamic play pattern can adjust whether or not you want to use star pieces or you want to focus on one of the other strategies. Or you can play with a different strategy. For example, the Lord of Dragons is another very powerful movement piece that starts near the back, but its special aspect here, called Kinship, says that whenever a piece with this aspect ends its move, any and all surrounding pieces that are friendly dragons may make a move as well. Literally, the simplest of pieces like the Dragon Horse and Dragon Knight can synergize well with this piece as well. And if you go ahead and promote it to the Dragon Emperor, where it can make a special move to basically Emperor jump to a surrounding dragon that you control. And that's why it's called the Dragon Emperor, because it kind of copies the movement that the Emperor gets, but at a slightly less powerful scale. This can capture pieces, which is super cool. Notably, this also lands it next to a dragon, which means that that dragon can also make a move as well. Which means that if you want to dump all of your time and investment into this strategy, you can get a ton of really effective results. But if your opponent counters by perhaps even just countering by capturing your Dragon Emperor with their Emperor, that means your whole strategy goes down the hole and you need to think of a new one on the fly.
Next, I want to talk a little bit about the generals. I will also be discussing this when I talk about roads, but generals, your trumpet generals back here, are going to be huge. You actually get 2 in this game rather than the 1 that you got in Trial 3. Being able to use these trumpet generals to move all the rest of your generals forward can sometimes be the best strategy. Obviously, from the last game, you'll see pieces like the water general, the fire general, the wind general, the mountain general, and you get 2 of each of these. There's also the jade general, which is new to this game right here, and it flips into the 100-100 which is a pretty good net piece that can come in handy later. Of course, there's also all of your stone, iron, tile, copper, silver, and gold generals, which can come in handy as well if you're able to move them forward and use them as supporting push potential.
There's also the Gambler, which basically is the drum, but for tokens. Whenever you move the Gambler, it has the raise aspect, which means that whenever you move it, it'll cause a token or a gotcha to move whenever this piece also moves, which means that if it moves twice with these very nice Igui moves, you can get 2 to move at the same time. And if it promotes, it becomes the all-in, which just accentuates the ability for it to move these because it can now move 3 times in one turn, allowing you to just make massive progress with your tokens. But not only tokens that are promoted from pawns or tokens that you just start with on the board, but also your gotchas, which you do start with 2 of, and they're pretty good pieces. And also all tokens will promote to a gotcha. We've already talked about this in some of the other trials, but the drum is a wonderful piece to focus on using as much as possible. Getting your Vanguard near your drum to get it promoted, or perhaps even throwing a Spirit Fruit towards the top to use, is a great way to get this going strong. Whenever you move the drum, it moves a pawn at the same time. And if you promote it to the Thunderclap, that's 5 pawn moves in one move, which means you not only get to move this extremely powerful piece that has the same movements as your Tarantula Hawkmoth, but also having the rhythm aspect means that it's going to be doing work to make your pawns move a ton alongside it. Another similar piece is the Mighty Hound. This piece is super cool, and it has the howl aspect, which basically says that instead of making a move, you can howl, where you basically choose a direction. If you howled this direction, it would be all pieces in this area that would be captured by this howl would be allowed to move as long as they are a dog, a pup, a wolf, and a hounds. All in that cone would be allowed to make one move, which can be super useful at the early games because, again, this is where your Mighty Hound starts, and so if you howl in this direction, you basically get a huge chunk of space that can be used for that movement. That's every single dog, pup, hound, and wolf in this entire area of the board, which means that you can do massive advancement with your dogs, your packs of wolves, your lion dogs, and even your howling dogs all at the same time, giving you a lot of space very quickly. But keep in mind that your opponent can do the same thing, taking out your Mighty Hound for one thing, but also the fact that it's not going to allow you to capture too much if you don't set up for it first. If you do promote the Mighty Hound, on the other hand, it turns into the Thunder Beast. Slightly better movement capabilities, but what's really important here is that Howl has been turned into Mighty Howl. And basically this just means that instead of creating a cone and all dogs, pups, hounds, and wolves in that area move, you just hit the entire board with this effect, which means that you no longer have to worry about where your positioning is for your Mighty Hound or your Thunder Beast in this situation. You simply hit everything. The banner is another one we've seen in Trial 6, the Trial of the Swarms, but it is such a powerful piece if you can set up properly for it. Promoting this thing is the best piece for promotion, but right off the bat, it's already pretty strong, allowing it to not only create a protection for itself by moving pieces with it, but it also allows you to get a lot of space creation by moving huge chunks of your army all at once, turning it into the Freedom Flag, whether that's via a promotion from a Vanguard or chomping up a Spirit Fruit with it. Either way, it is really great because it produces a ton of potential power very quickly. Of course, I've been talking about the Vanguard quite a bit, and if you haven't seen the Trial of Promotions or Trial 7, you might not even know what this is. The Vanguard has the Inspire aspect, which means that every piece that's surrounding it is considered promoted while it's next to that. This can not only help you demote pieces that you might want to demote, such as your Wild Guns and Yazaimon Octopuses, which promote to crappier pieces but have easy promotion, but it can also help you demote pieces that your enemies have by moving towards and then moving away from them, or helping you get your weaker pieces out faster by having them promoted for one move while they move away from the Vanguard. The Vanguard also has pretty good movement and is immune to the attacks of an Emperor, but keeping it safe is going to be very important, because if you get this thing picked off, your game immediately drops as far as your chances of winning that game. You've also got your pull movers and push movers. These act very similarly, where they have the pull and push aspects, Push being that every piece in front of it when it moves is pushed alongside of it, and pull being that any piece connected behind it is pulled along with its movement. This, of course, cannot push pieces off the board, and it can't move if there's no space for it to be pushed, but it not only pushes your pieces, but also the enemy pieces. Can be super useful, although does not help with multi-capturing, because it pushes units instead of capturing them. They both promote to the pulling general and pushing general, which simply upgrade their movement variety and allowing them to move a lot more pieces a lot more effectively. It does so happen that the pushing mover is way stronger than the pulling one, but both have their uses, especially for creating paths. We've also got one more special piece before we move into some of the just overall powerhouses, that being the Go Mover. Even the go-betweens can end up being pretty powerful. The Go Mover and its promotion have what's called Team Up, where this means that this aspect causes a go-between to move in the same manner as a piece with Team Up whenever it moves. So for example, if you moved the Go Mover in this manner and captured a piece here, a nearby go-between might also do the exact same movement. This could cause you to not only capture multiple pieces at a time, but if you can promote your Go Mover into a Go About, its movement capabilities skyrocket into the hemisphere. I mean, look at all of these maneuvering and multi-moving that you can not only be using to attack pieces, retreat out of the way, but also duplicate that movement onto a go-between that could be doing the same thing. This makes your go-betweens not only super useful while it's on the board, but it also means that it's a bit of a sacrificial pawn in the sense that using this to just pick off a bunch of frontliners can be super good, and since it's not really the best for late game, using it early game to pick off armies can be super useful. Speaking of picking off armies, one of the powerfulest, most useful pieces in the entire game is the Cinderstorm. It is considered a fire piece, which means you need to be careful about water pieces when it's moving, but it has that nice fire range that we've seen before. Fire range means that whenever you move with it, you can either range normally, or you can jump over as many pieces as you would like as long as you end on an open space. And if you do that, burn every piece you crossed in the process. Now, this is pretty good already, but what's important here is that if you can find a path that's open that your enemy hasn't seen into their backline, you not only will get the burn range, but promoting this thing to erupting Mount Fuji basically can just take a huge bite out of your enemy's backline, because erupting Mount Fuji is the only piece in the entire game that has double burn, which means not only does it burn surrounding pieces, but it burns pieces in a 2x2 around it, which is this space here. Just a massive area to be just annihilating enemy pieces.
This is a game that really makes you feel like you are controlling a full army, and if you let any of your extremities, your out-pushed armies, push too far alone without any backup, they're going to get removed very quickly by things like these flaming chariots, fire generals, fire demons. Any piece that has mass piece destruction, even things like the banner, can rip apart armies in seconds if you leave them unchecked. You need to make sure you keep a hold on all of your pieces. Never let any of your pieces stay unprotected either, because remember, the Emperor is always a looming threat. The biggest complicated part about this game is that unlike regular chess or even most shogi varieties, you have your opening, your mid-game, and then your end game. This game scraps that system because there is so many pieces and such a far distance between you and your opponent. At the lowest point, you have an entire chessboard's worth of space between you and your opponent. And that's assuming that your dog is outside of the board to begin with, and so is theirs, and they have to move towards each other. So the basics of how this game will function comes down to this system that I've kind of laid out. Obviously, some games won't follow this because this game is so large and so complex that you can very well make your own system, and if it works and beats your opponents, it's good enough. But the way I've kind of listed this out is you start with your opening. This is when you create openings in your front lines to help your backline, more strong pieces get past your pawns or support your pawns as they push. This section will typically last around 20 to 40 moves, depending on how quickly you want to transition into your next stage, which the next stage being road creation. This is something that you'll never see in chess because you don't need, you technically see it in chess, but typically a road creation in chess lasts one move, whereas in this game, it's more like 15 to 30. Road creation is when you basically create paths out of these pieces in your back lines to help them move to where they need to go. For example, something like the trumpet general is super useful for getting out two of your generals that are in the back lines that can't really get anywhere without some help. The trumpet general can of course swap places with those pieces, as I discussed in the major piece section. And so, if you are able to move and create a road for your trumpet general, whenever it swaps, it can come right back out using that road to teleport another piece. And you keep this system going until you move all of your generals from the back out. And this is a great way to get weak pieces to the front so that they can support your strong pieces in a push. And that's where we come to the next stage. The regroup or army creation section is the game where you actually start pushing. This is the section of the game where you go from here to here. You're pushing towards your enemy's front lines, and this will typically last anywhere from 8 moves to like the rest of the game, depending on how your strategy works. And this is where the system kind of breaks down as far as what is like specified and what doesn't specify. The game is very complicated, and if your opponent has been pushing really fast, you can use this stage to instead simply capture all of their pushed pieces that have no backup and then regroup from there, because then you'll have a massive advantage over your opponent who has been spending all their tempo just moving forward without any strategy for what's going to happen if they get pushed. If they are following this system, on the other hand, this is when the first captures are going to start taking place. Notably, this is around turn 80 that the first piece might get captured. Of course, it could be a lot sooner if you have a really aggro strat or your opponent was doing something stupid and you take advantage of that. The biggest problem with trying to do something like that is if you push yourself thin, they can take advantage of that, and trying to recover might sometimes not be worth the effort you took to capture a go-between or a dog that went too far. After the regroup step or the army creation step, where you're starting to push towards your enemy's base, this is when the true capture game begins. This is the advanced state. This is when you start trading back and forth pieces with your opponent to try to take an advantageous position out of the trades. Perhaps this is going to be a state where you want to use tempo to take advantage of your opponent's weaknesses. Perhaps this is where you want to take advantage of their open roads to push far enough in to get some promotions off. A lot of things can happen during the advanced stage of the game, but this is basically when the winner is decided, unless you're playing against a very skilled opponent that can pull a win out of a bad position. In general, the advanced stage before the mid game is probably when most people would concede the game. But if you're in for the long haul, we've got some more stages left. Next is the mid game. This is when both teams are going to be trying to recover from the stages of trades that just occurred. Right after the advance, both teams are going to be down a lot of material, and they're either going to want to be backing up their armies that are forward or regrouping their armies backwards to basically form a defense to stop the attack that was hitting them. This is basically whichever team took the biggest advantage in the last stage is going to be trying to regroup their forward armies, while the person that took the big hit is going to be regrouping backwards to protect from the attack that just hit them. Very similar to if you were on a castle being sieged, the people that are forward, your armies that are out there like maybe scouts or something, are going to want to be coming back to help protect the castle. Whereas the people that were attacking, and if they've already made a huge hit to the wall, might want to retreat at this point to, formulate a plan for their next attack, or they might want to push farther if they think they can get a win off just this advantage. This is where the person that's winning could very easily get flipped into the person that's losing based off of what their choice is. If they push for game and there is no game, they're probably going to lose all the advantage they just created and have to deal with the crackback from the next attack of their opponent. But if they back up and regroup, they can very easily secure a material advantage worth hundreds of points, because this game has thousands upon thousands of points of material available for pickup. And at any moment, that swing could happen where the Emperor gets taken off one side where the other one still has it. And keep that in mind, the Emperor is probably the most important piece to keep synergy with. If one team loses their Emperor and the other one keeps it, a huge power differential has just been reached where you almost need to focus all your attention on locking down your position so that they can't use their Emperor to take more space. Of course, after the mid game, we have two different options. The first of which is going to be called the regroup stage. And I just kind of talked about this, where either team or both teams are going to regroup and reassess the situation to figure out what the next move is. And then of course there's the option where the enemy just pushes into you and tries to win, which is called the final push. This can lead to an end game if their final push is strong enough. But if it's not strong enough, it usually will lead to you getting the stronger regroup and going from there into the develop stage, where you redevelop your states again. This is basically the road stage, but you've already created your roads. So perhaps you'll make new roads, or you'll just use those same roads you've already made to redevelop new pieces to back up what you've already got out and go into the second advanced state, where again, you push for another attack. Trades will happen, and if you come out on top or you come out behind, this process will repeat until finally you push yourself into an end game. And the end game, of course, being you get so low piece-wise that the kings, princes, heavenly tetrarchs, whatever's been created that has the royal aspect can finally be captured and finish the game. And like I said, if you actually want to finish the game, not just concede, but actually push for a full, complete win on this board, it is going to take hours, probably tens of hours. The first time I played this, I played by myself. It took me 8.5 hours. I didn't play it in one sitting, by the way, to actually finish the game. I did actually finish the game. But of course, I was playing by myself, so the ability to counterplay situations sometimes isn't the strongest when you're playing by yourself, because you know what the enemy's doing at all times. And so catching them off guard sometimes is impossible. It's pretty much always impossible when you're playing by yourself, unless you catch something when it's already too late for them to react to it. But the overall game itself is very fun. I can't stress this enough. I don't think Taikyoku Shogi is actually a fun game. There's multiple reasons for that. The main of which is that there is no dynamicity to the gameplay. You're moving small pieces that have weak movements, big pieces that have strong movements, and you're both just in the middle of the board, trading until finally somebody concedes because they don't see a way out of an attack that goes over as many pieces as it wants to go over to capture pieces. And I just find that boring. I'm gonna be honest. This game, I think, is actually a fun game. As much as I've talked about how stressful it is to play, how much of a mental challenge it is to keep track of this many pieces. But it's fun. I love playing this game. It has been fun. Every time I played it, whether it's with somebody else or by myself, I have enjoyed the game. And after I finish recording this, I'm gonna play it again because it took 2 hours to set up. I'm gonna use that to play the game. Of course, after all of that's been said, we're gonna go over every piece that's been added for the final trial. If you've seen the rest of the series, you already know what the rest of the pieces do. But now we're going to talk about the new ones. There's more new pieces in this game than there were pieces in the first trial. So let's go.
Now I'm going to just be going over some of the pieces from this game. There's a lot of new ones and there's a lot of old ones, and I'm just going to recap a bit because some people that are watching this video might not know anything. But basically, we'll be going over every piece in a little bit of detail, but swinging through them pretty quickly because I do not want to make this video super long. If you really want to know how this game works, you can check it out, all the other videos, and of course I am going to be playing this game. Well, actually I'm not going to be playing it, but John and Case will be playing this at some point probably on Tabletop Simulator, and I will hopefully get the Tabletop Simulator links made soon enough so that everybody else can try it out if you wish. But we're starting at the top layer. In the top layer of this game, you'll only get 4 dogs. This is, of course, the layer that is further than any of the Taikyoku Shogi layers because my layer goes further one space. Behind that is a set of pawns. Of course, these only have a 1-step move, which means they can only move 1 space forward, unlike the dogs, which can move 3 spaces, 1 forward and 2 in the diagonal directions. Underneath these dogs are some howling dogs, which have a range move and a 1 space behind them move. And of course, you've also got your go-betweens, which step forward or backwards. Finally, some new pieces up here, packs of wolves. These can jump to these spaces in these directions, giving them a decent chunk of mobility beforehand, but they also have ranging moves and a step followed by a jump over here. These rangers are the most important because they can use them to make huge attacks right away, especially in combination with a howl from your mighty hound over here. Pawn row, where we get pawns, followed by donkeys, cunning tanuki from the first game, treacherous foxes from the first game, and other than that we can move into the next row afterwards, where left chariots return, violent ox return with flying dragons beneath them, side movers and vertical movers have been in almost every game since their inception, and they are in this one as well. Killer whales were in the last one and they are in this one as well, followed by sperm whales and bottlenose dolphins, which have been in a few games. And the frozen lion is making another appearance after not being seen since Trial 6 of the Trial of the Swarms. Challenge 4 burning lions are here as well, and another piece that we've seen the promotion of from the flying dragon here, but we also get to start with one, that being a rain dragon. Also, we get soaring eagles and horned falcons as you did in Trials 4, 6, and 7. The princess is making a return in place of the queen, being able to promote to a samurai. And we've also got a lion. You actually get 2 lions in this game, one on the left and one on the right, underneath them being the lion dog, and a painted lion on the right with a lion hawk on the left. So plenty of lion pieces for you to play around with. I already talked about it, but near the middle we've got a tarantula hawk moth and a great dragon to the left of it, with the Northern Barbarian, Western Barbarian, Southern Barbarian, and Eastern Barbarian stars making up these 2 sections right here. Underneath those being the Tranquil Soul and the Furious Fiend, some really great queen movement plus area movers, and to the right and left of these stars are these 2 sections where we'll see Tengu and Hook Mover with Wild Gun, Peeled Blister, and Yazaimon Octopuses. You get 2 of each of these one-time use hook moving pieces. As we move to the row under that, a new piece, the Burning Chariot, which we're finally seeing a piece that promotes to a fire demon, that being this Burning Chariot. After that, we've seen the Flying Dragon, which I already talked about, Mighty Boar, which is above a Flying Oxen, returning from the previous games, and we'll see some new pieces, the River Demon, Field Demon, and Woodland Demon, which we have seen this one before. They basically promote to some interesting moving pieces that I'm throwing up on screen here. The River Demon, of course, having Splash, and the Field Demon having easy promotion. But the movement of these pieces is a little strange. The River Demon, of course, has some interesting defensive properties, given that it's a water piece, and the Field Demon has easy promotion to get this really interesting hook move that hooks 3 times instead of just twice. Next to that, we've got this star formation of stars with the Mighty Hound in the middle of. On the right side of the board, on the other hand, this section of stars has the Gambler in it instead of the Hound. but it is still the same for these demons over here. On the other side of that other set of demons, being the fire demon, the frost demon, and the mountain demon. The frost demon has the same aspect as the frost lion, that being the freeze aspect that freezes pieces surrounding it, and the mountain demon has the same aspect as the mountain general, that being rumble. They promote to the same movements as the demon dragon from the fire demon, but have the same aspects either way. As we continue down this line, you'll also see a mighty falcon and a mighty eagle, which are the top end promotions from the horned falcon and soaring eagle from the previous games, but these pieces also promote into extremely powerful pieces, some of the strongest variants of these pieces themselves. After that, on the right side of the equation, we've got the Raining Gale, which is a super nice piece that has greater splash once it's promoted, but a water piece. And on the other side, like we talked about earlier, is that Cinder Storm that promotes to the erupting Mount Fuji, one of the best attacking pieces if you can get it set up early. We already talked about some of these pieces in here, but we of course have our drum on the left and our banner on the right within these stars of barbarians, where we start to see some verticality sorting. As you can see, under the burning chariot and left chariot, we've got a stone chariot. Under that is the iron chariot, tile, copper, silver, gold, jade, and reverse chariots, all above the lance, which creates this extremely huge battery of just a ton of pieces, only held back by this burning chariot. If you're able to get this out of the way and the pawn out of the way, you can create a massive array of just like spam forward pieces. Same on the right side, of course. And onto the row afterwards, you can see a slightly less effective but still there battery using the ox cart, liberated horse, painted horse, whale, and then it moves into less effective pieces from this row where you go to mountain falcon, mountain eagle, which were both in Trial of the Swarm, and then you'll see the treetop tiger, which of course was in the last trial but does not have very much mobility forward. Above that is the Go Mover, which we talked about during the Major Pieces section, and above that is a Blue Dragon, which of course would synergize with your Lord of Dragons, but otherwise is a slightly simple piece. As we continue through this row, you'll see a Flying Oxen, which I talked about earlier, and a Burning Horse. This is a new piece, and it does have the fire aspect. It promotes to a Burning Lion, which is a great piece to have going. After that, we see that star that I talked about earlier, but moving swiftly past it, we'll see a Flying Falcon from the first game, a Square Mover, which was from the last game, and underneath that is a Racing Chariot, also from the last game. Then you'll see your Dragon Knight and Dragon Horse, which I want to talk about this verticality quick here. Within this box here is all of your diagonal and orthogonal main pieces. Rook, Dragon Knight, Soaring Eagle, Mighty Eagle, Violent Tortoise, Great Salamander, Little Rook, and Rook General. And on the right is the Bishop General, Little Bishop, Round Apple, Giant Spider, Bishop, Dragon Horse, Mighty Falcon, and Horned Falcon. And of course that is also mirrored on the other side over here. But moving forward after that, you'll see an old kite with a poisonous snake on the other side. These of course are the pieces that can turn into hook movers and tengus, although on this board it's probably pretty unlikely that you'll be seeing that promotion, but you never know. If the Vanguard moves close enough, you could use that to get some interesting pickoffs from these slightly weaker pieces. We already talked about the leg, Lion, Hawk, and Painted Lion, but other than that, there's also a Birds of Paradise and a Murder of Crows at the start of this game, unlike the last few where they have only been seen as promotions. Moving the next row down, you'll see an Enchanted Badger from the last game, which is a pretty good mover overall, which does promote to Furious Fiend. After that, you'll see the Crippled Wheel, which was also from the last game. You get two of these, and they are pretty good if you can use them to kind of stabilize yourself with the fact that they need to be captured 2 turns in a row just to get rid of them. After that, you'll see your little Nets package, which, just like from Trial 5, is very effective at locking down the board and making your opponent have to really strategize where they want to move lest they get captured by a really weak piece. Earthen Net, Skyward Net, Marionette squished between the two of them, the Lancing Net, and also the Puppet Master. Moving forward, we've also got the Chinese Rooster and Old Monkey combo from a few games ago, and we also underneath them got their promotions, the Wizard Stork and Mountain Witch. before we move into extremely impressive battery right here. We saw the square mover and the racing chariot already, but after that is the great standard, front standard, center standard, rear standard, and little standard. All of these being pieces that promote to one piece further up the row, the great standard having no promotion. These are all rook adjacent pieces which also have a little bit of diagonal capabilities, but in general are going to be probably traded pretty quickly once some pawns are moved out of the way. Moving more towards the middle, we'll now see the cannon lineup here, where we basically have the stone, iron, tile, copper, silver, gold, and jade cannons all lined up in this one row. Of course, mirrored on the other side as well. Now, as we move further into this center triangle section here, these two lines distinguishing where we are, we have got the wooden dove on the left, the spirit dove on the right, with a golden bird on the right and a peacock on the left. These, of course, have been in other games previously. But some new pieces are the Asura, Sumo Wrestler, Heavenly Protector, and Yakshini, which are basically just the Yaksha, Divine Guardian, Wrestler, and Rakshasa, but they can use their movements twice instead of just once. You get 4 chariot soldiers, which means the capabilities to get Heavenly Tetrarch King are really high, and the Asura, Sumo Wrestler, Heavenly Protector, and Yakshini all promote 2 Heavenly Tetrarchs, which means getting them online as a royal piece isn't actually that difficult. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go see Trial 7. Beneath those, we've got the Vertical Pup and Heavenly Horse, which promote to the Violent Squid and the Leopard King, which means that you can get a royal piece off of this pup if you use it in tandem with something like a howl, or just opening up ways for you to get it towards the front, which is super interesting. Like I said earlier, you get a pair of trumpet generals here, which is nice, allowing you to get some of your backward generals over here out into the main board easier. And some new pieces, the Itsumade and Rock, which are really important pieces for getting promoted. The Itsumade promotes into possibly the best area mover in the entire game. It is the Horned Lion. This thing moves up to 5 times in any direction, which is, it's the biggest area, most effective area mover in the game, bar none. This thing can take out almost any piece. Another piece that can take out almost any piece is the Charred Queen, which is the promotion of the Rock. This thing has got burn range in every direction, which means that it can really chaotically be destroying pieces as long as you can keep it protected whilst it's moving. Really, really effective late game, whereas the Horned Lion is more effective early game. You've seen the typical Kirin and Phoenix, which have been in every single game since Trial 1. In the middle of those, this little 6th section here is the elephant section, where you see a painted elephant, a fragrant elephant, and a divine elephant. They aren't that useful, but do have decent promotions. Let's move back to our row by row analysis as we move over here. We see a snow tiger, with next to it being an old rat and rat snake from a few previous games. You'll see the angry boar and cat swords of Trial 3, and of course next to them was that freeze package which I talked about earlier. After that, we can see a Vermilion Sparrow, which does promote to a Cinderstorm, which can mean if you can get this thing promoted, it's actually a pretty good piece, especially if you use the Vanguard just to get it off one attack that kind of just chumps a bunch of damage out. Next to that is your token and gotcha section, where we see some really nice capabilities with having 3 tokens on both sides for a total of 6 and 1 gotcha. These of course synergize really well with your gambler, which is just a few spaces above it. Moving more towards the center, as we skip over pieces we've already talked about, you'll see that Blind Bear, which again promotes to an Emperor, and it is pretty close to your Spirit Fruit if you want to go for that. Although saving it for later might be better, because again, the Vanguard can also promote the Blind Bear to get off one good attack. But next to this Spirit Fruit and Blind Bear is your Walking Heron and Young Salmon. You have 2 of each of these, and they promote to Spirit Fruits as well, which can mean that if you can pull off a promotion with one of these things, it's really good, because you get extra Spirit Fruit potential with its really great aspect. Moving more towards the center, you also have a Dove and She-Devil on these sides. Both sides get 1, which means you have a total of 2 of each. And then it just has some really good movement. And honestly, moving a dove up this way and then moving it through this path, perhaps you create a nice diagonal opening here by moving some of your stuff out of the way, can honestly really help some of these pieces make space quickly. And opening this path can be just a really nice one, because honestly, you can then move your Kirin a little bit out of the way. Perhaps you move this young salmon out of the way after you've moved your dove, move the Kirin, and then you've already opened up a nice way for your trumpet general to start moving out. This is how roads are created, and a really great path already starts with one of these open spaces that you begin the game with. On the other side, instead of a blind bear, over here you have a reclining dragon. Nowhere near as strong as the blind bear's promotion, but it does promote to a great dragon, which is a great piece to have on board. Pieces here, these are the Carnage set that you'll be getting off the bat, where you start with the Three Frogs Singing, a Ronin, which of course was the promotion of the Three Frogs Singing, the promotion of that being the Samurai Warrior, the promotion of that being the Mighty Daimos, and the promotion of that being the Great Shogun. These pieces all have Carnage, and again, Carnage triggers whenever you capture a piece, which means that the Mighty Daimos and the Great Shogun can trigger their Carnage twice, which means that they can not only capture two pieces with one of their basic queen movements, but also allows them to capture up to 4 pieces if they area move and capture twice in that process. Super useful, and of course you get 2 of each of these. A row under that you'll see a rushing bird, not a very powerful piece, but it is sometimes useful. You'll get the side flyer and vertical flyers from Trial 6, the ram's horn from Trial 7, the Capricorn, Libra, and Sagittarius and Taurus, which again I talked about earlier, but these pieces are the promotions from the stars from earlier games. Of course you get them off the bat this time. Next to that, you'll see a seaside bird and a clever kitsune, which are basically the promotions of your cunning tanuki and your treacherous fox from the first game. But you start with them this time, and they have some decent promotions. Moving forward, you'll see the evil wolf, the blind tiger from the first few games that you've seen, and some newer pieces from the last game is the prancing stag, the flying horse, the fierce bear, the fierce eagle, and on the other side, another fierce eagle, fierce bear, flying horse, and prancing stag. As we get down to some of these final roles, you'll see some old pieces that we've seen a few times. The Mighty Knight is the promotion of the Heavenly Horse, but now you start with one, and you also get a Heavenly Horse and a Knight. After that, we see the Silver Hare and Golden Deer from our last trial, followed by a Cloud Eagle, which has been not seen since Trial 1. Moving down into this set of 4 here, you'll see a Angel Wings, a Goose Wings, a Swallow's Wings, and a Dragon Wings. Only one of these we've seen from the first trial, that being the Swallow's Wings, but it did promote to an Angel's Wings, so now we also start with one of those, and get the Dragon and Goose Wings to also play around with. You also start with a Violent Squid, which is a pretty decent piece, and if we move forward more, you'll see the Ferocious Leopard from Trial 2, we'll see a Turtle Snake from Trial 7, and the Water Buffalo from Trial 4 and Trial 7. Along with some newer pieces, the Mountain Stag, which has a pretty decent promotion, the Pole Mover, which I talked about earlier, most effective if you can start pushing it into this area and then push pieces to back up with it so that it can pull them all out into the open. After that, you'll see a Mountain Princess, which basically is a queen plus the movements of a mighty horse, and the Mountain Spirit, which is basically the exact same thing, but instead it jumps once in every direction instead of having the movements of a mighty horse. You also see the Flying Cat, which is the promotion of the donkey. You start with 2 of these, and of course you also start with the 2 Mountain Princesses and Mountain Spirits. In the middle here, you'll see your beautiful, most powerful piece, the Emperor, and next to it being the Drunken Elephant, your chance of getting a second king, or in this case, actually a second prince. You also get the Star Warrior and the Lord of Dragons, which I talked about during the Mighty Piece section. These are really good pieces to synergize with some of your other stuff. And finally, moving into the final row, you'll see some friendly faces with the Stone General, Iron General, Tile General, Copper General, Silver General, Gold General, and a new one, the Jade General, which promotes to a piece that has some freeze potential. After that, you'll see the more important generals, those being the Mountain General, Wind General, Fire General, and Water General. Notably, the fire and water generals start right next to each other, so you need to be really careful with how you move them so you don't accidentally destroy each other. Obviously, you can move the fire general pretty freely as long as you stay within this space, because the water general protects all the pieces in this area from getting burned. But once you start moving past that, the fire general is going to start burning your own pieces with its active burn and enemy pieces with passive and active burn. After that, you'll see a Dark Spirit, which has been in the game since Trial 6, on the other side being the Diva, and your 2 starting royal pieces. You get a Prince, no King, but you do get a Mighty King, which moves 2 spaces in any direction instead of just 1. Super nice that you get basically an upgrade to your king by the final game. You also get 2 royal pieces off the rip, which is a bit different, but honestly doesn't change too much because most of the time it's going to be fire pieces that take out your final piece. And that basically wraps up the entire setup for the final trial.
I'm going to show off the board state. It's been about 100 turns, and as you can see, white here took a devastating loss from a Mount Fuji promotion. Was able to recapture with the clever Kitsune though, so it wasn't too big of a deal, but it did burn across this line. Here's the clever Kitsune marching back out right after taking, and the River Demon over here did protect quite a bit of material beforehand, but in general, white is on the back step right now. But yeah, I would say we're in the advanced state right now. Lots of trades have been going on, especially in the middle and towards this side of the equation. The Mighty Hound is missing on the white side. Both Emperors and both drums have been taken via Vanguard promotions of bears. And the Vanguard over here is not really doing a whole lot on black side, but they could definitely move that to make it more useful. And a lot of material over here got pushed using the push mover. As we move into the stage of regrouping, we'll see if black is able to hold its advantage long enough to push white the rest of the way out, or if white is able to recover from the devastating loss that this was basically the main cause of. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was a ton of fun to make in general. It took a while to make because I really wanted to make sure that this one was pretty good. That's why I did it in person. But this game is honestly one of the funnest ones that I think I've made. I really like super complicated, super huge, massive, complex games, whether that be a chess variant or a really complicated card game with a ton of cards, or really anything. I just really like really large and complicated things. But that's not all I make. I will be showing up some other new games that I'll be coming out with soon. But for now, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. And if you did, I would love it if you gave me a like or subscribe for more similar content. I'm also doing stuff for D&D. I made a special system for leveling up. If you want to check that out, it's in my channel as well. And I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. Goodbye.